What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel once again, and welcome back to another TSGG video review. If this is your first video review watching with TSGG, I'll go over really quickly our formula for breaking down a game. Basically, it ranges, we have 5 topics. It goes fun factor and emergence, control and gameplay mechanics, graphics, music and sound, and story and replayability. Today's topic is going to be The Division 2, which I have sunk about 100 hours into in the last 7 days. It's absolutely insane, and there is so much to do. Without further ado, let's get into it really quickly, starting with fun factor and emergence. For me, the game did actually start very, very slowly, and in any looter shooter it usually does, because you do have to build up your level, you got to build up your gear, and it is kind of that genre that does take a little bit to get into, but it is actually my favorite genre. So for the game, for this, out of 20, I'm going to give the fun factor and emergence in this game actually a 17. Just because it is, although it did start slow, there's a ton of stuff to do in the world. The open world is absolutely incredible. It is probably the best done open world I've seen to the date. You're never bored. There's always something going on, and it's really, really a good time. Moving on from that, we're going to get into actually the weakest area, in my opinion, of the game, the control and gameplay mechanics. Although I did lead off this kind of topic saying that it is the weakest, that's just kind of my opinion with this, so don't take this as a kind of condemning of the game. There's just a few mechanics that I don't exactly appreciate. Getting into cover is kind of glitchy, and it'll tend to either jump over the cover or go to a cover you don't exactly want to be on in the line of sight of enemies. So those are a few little glitches that it was in D1 as well, so I was hoping that it did get fixed in this one. I do still tend to see that a few times. It does happen to, of course, be in those big firefights with the yellow bar bosses that you just happen to get in cover that you don't want to be on. As far as that goes, that's kind of the downside of the gameplay mechanics. The gunfire in the game is definitely the upside. The gunfire and the gunplay in the game is excellent, very well done, especially endgame, especially when you start getting those exotics and those high-end gear, and it really starts to take shape. The gunplay at that point becomes kind of a cacophony, I guess, of sound. The guns themselves are very well done. The shots are incredible. Honestly, it's like going to the firing range. It's exactly the same. It's perfect. Very well done right there by Ubisoft. So I do have to give them props for that. As far as the gameplay mechanics go, I'm going to give them a 15 here for that, because the movement and the getting on and off cover, that can be a little janky. There are a few settings that can help with this, so you do have to play around with that. Definitely check those out if you haven't already, or if you plan on playing the game. They're in control under settings, and they definitely help a lot, but they're not exactly told to you. I actually found them from a Twitter. A person on Twitter said, hey, this is, if you're having issues with movement or with getting on cover, definitely try these, and they do help a lot. So definitely check those out. But moving on from that, we have graphics. Honestly, in 2019, there's really no excuse not to have perfect graphics, especially on PC or Xbox One X or PS4 Pro. So it's a 20 here because the game is beautiful. It's wide open world, and there aren't really clipping issues. I don't see anything graphically that really bothers me. In a game this size, you're always going to have the little glitches, so I can't fault them for that, because it's a huge open world with 75% of the actual buildings are basically enterable. I can't fault them at all for graphics. It's pretty. The day-night cycle, I'm going to be honest with you, is horrible, because of the fact that it does get so dark and you can't see anything. But this is a real-world game. It's a real-world night-day cycle, so it makes sense, because there's in back alleys and underground, there's not going to be lights like that. So it's really well done in the realism, but when you go into the open world in the dark, you're shooting blind. Regardless of where your brightness settings are, you see nothing. I'm playing on Xbox One X on a 4K TV, so it could be different for others, but it is just dark. And like I said, that's not an issue with the graphics. That's not an issue with the game. It's a real world night-day cycle, and it is pitch black. So I'm going to give them a 20 there. Their game is beautiful, really well done. I have no issues with it. Music and sound, this one is going to actually score higher than a lot of people expect, just because of the fact that the music is kind of based around combat. They took a little bit of DMC5 here, which if you haven't watched, we did a review for them last Saturday. The combat and the music kind of intertwine here. So as the combat gets more aggressive, your health starts to get lower. There's more enemies on the screen. The combat music picks up. It's kind of heavy rock. There's a lot of drumming, a lot of guitar, and it's really well done. Not quite to Devil Trigger with DMC5, but still, it's their own version. Really, really, I do love it. It really puts you kind of in the game. You feel the upbeat music. You feel the intensity of the moment, and I really do enjoy it. So I'm going to give them a 19 there, which is a very high score. As far as actual music and sound goes, outside of the music, the footfalls are really well done. Regardless of whether you're wearing a nice headset or you're just listening on your speakers, you can really hear the footfalls. You can hear discussions going on between enemies, between random citizens out in the streets. It's really well done, but it's kind of what you expect in 2019. Nothing like over the top. So I'll give them a 19 for it, just because it's great. But it's nothing. It doesn't get the 20. It doesn't blow me away to that factor that I'm gonna say, okay, they've got the absolute best, and I'm giving it to them. So I know 19 is pretty close to that, but I'm not giving them that extra point. Now we get to the hardest category for a looter shooter, especially, and then for the Division. Story and replayability. So this is difficult because the story is one of the most boring I think I've ever played in my life. And the end game is one of the best I've ever played in my life, if not the best. So it's hard here because replayability, you got to give it a 20. But story, it struggles. The side missions are way more fun and enjoyable than the actual story missions. And honestly, half the time you're doing a story mission and you don't know why, and it's just very forgettable. I think I remember 2 of the NPCs' names, and it's just because they don't mean anything to you. They're not an important part. They're not featured. They don't have a kind of character cycle. There's no character development there. It's just very, very lacking for me. And that it's hard because it's a looter shooter. The end game is actually the key. That's where you expect to see everything in these types of games. So it's hard to say. I'm going to give them a 15 there. I'm going to take this story, and then I'm going to take the end game, and I'm going to kind of try and average it out in my head. Is end game more important? I'd say so, because it keeps you coming back and it keeps you playing the game, and that is their goal, of course. So I'll give them that, and it is one of the best I've ever played. So they did very well there. I really enjoyed the specializations, the end game kind of strongholds. All of that is really well done. I wish there was more to the story. I wish it was more engaging, and you really wanted to help these characters, because in an end game kind of apocalypse, which is the world you're set in, you'd think that they could build some kind of emotional relationships with them, and they just don't. It's just not there in this game. Maybe that's me. Maybe other people will feel differently. But as far as the review goes, I'm going to give them a 15 there. And that's still a pretty good score, just because the end game is the best ever, I'd say. So if you're keeping tally, we went through fun factor and emergence. They got a 17 there. Control gameplay mechanics is a 15, so that's a 32. Graphics, I gave them that 20, so you're going to see the 52 there. Music and sound, they got the 19, a little bit off of the 20, so that's a 71. And then for story and replayability, I gave them a 15 with an overall score of an 86. The game is missing some things, and they have actually patched quite a few things that helped out a lot as far as graphics and gameplay controls. So you could see that score go up, especially if they release DLC that has story in it that gets more engaging. But for right now, that's an 86, very solid score. That's an A for us, and there's only one tier above that. So I really I enjoyed the game. I wish there was more to the story, but overall, excellent game, and I do recommend picking it up if you haven't already. But that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and as always, have an awesome week.